part of what makes Saratoga so successful and so dynamic is that it's a scarce kind of a resource. The fact that it's only 40 days, that it begins in the middle of July and ends on Labor Day, makes it all that more attractive to fans. It makes it all that more exciting.
Hi there, it's WAMC News Director Ian Pickus. And on this episode of the WAMC News Podcast, if a Belmont Stakes is run at Saratoga, what does it look like? Well, if a horse becomes just the 14th to win the Triple Crown next year or the year after, history will be made at Saratoga Race Course. That's because the New York Racing Association plans to bring the Belmont Stakes to Saratoga next June. It comes as downstate Belmont Park prepares for a nearly $500 million overhaul. It would require opening Saratoga early in June instead of July. The Belmont is the last leg of the Triple Crown, which also includes the Kentucky Derby and the Preakness. Saratoga's season currently lasts 40 days, running 5 days a week from late July through Labor Day. NYRA spokesman Patrick McKenna says with state approval, the move will happen in 2024 to allow for the uninterrupted renovation at Belmont.
When NYRA secured the funding to build a new Belmont Park back in June, it quickly became clear that the size and scope of the construction would require the Belmont Stakes to be moved away from Belmont Park, certainly once and possibly twice, which is what we began talking about publicly in June. Since that point, while the attention of certainly the thoroughbred racing world was fixated on Saratoga, NYRA has made significant progress on a number of different projects that are critical to the new Belmont Park, most notably the installation of a synthetic surface at Belmont, which will be the fourth racing surface, as well as preliminary work on a new tunnel, the second tunnel, that will allow horses to access that synthetic surface. So at this point, our goal is to hold the Belmont Stakes in both 2024 and 2025 at Saratoga Race Course to allow for that work, as well as the construction of the new building to continue uninterrupted. So largely because of the progress made over the last 2 to 3 months, that would be jeopardized should we run the Belmont at Belmont in 2024. So that's what has changed over the last, say, 3 months. And this is all very good news. Not only does it mean that the progress at Belmont is slightly ahead of schedule, but it also means this opportunity to bring a Triple Crown event to Saratoga Race Course hopefully should be here sooner than we initially anticipated. This still is subject to approval of both the New York State Franchise Oversight Board and the New York State Gaming Commission, who is responsible for approving NYRA's race dates annually. But in essence, this is what we hope to do, and we feel like it will be an incredibly exciting event for Saratoga, for the Capital Region, for all of upstate New York. As we just saw throughout the 2023 summer meet, attendance continues to exceed expectation. The overall interest and enthusiasm around the summer meet continues to be incredibly strong. So with that in mind, we believe that a Triple Crown event at Saratoga will certainly capture the attention of the sports world.
And how come Saratoga and not Aqueduct?
Aqueduct has held the Belmont Stakes as recently as the 1960s when Belmont Park was last renovated. At that point, Aqueduct was an incredibly modern, virtually brand new facility capable of hosting 80, 90,000 people. Since then, Resorts World Casino was constructed at Aqueduct, the VLT facility. So Aqueduct is less than half of the size that it was in the 60s when it hosted the Belmont. Aqueduct no longer has the kinds of amenities that it did that made it so attractive in the 1960s and 70s. Contrast that with Saratoga, where in recent years, NYRA has been able to complete incredibly significant capital improvement projects that have provided new and differentiated hospitality offerings for the fans who congregate each summer at Saratoga. The 1863 Club, the Top of the Stretch, the Spa Verandas, the list goes on and on. But Saratoga Race Course is perfectly situated to host an event like the Belmont.
Okay, let's get some details. Would it be multiple days of racing? Would you start in June and just stay open through Labor Day? How would it work?
Yeah, so we envision a Belmont Stakes racing festival, which is the format that has been in place since 2014. So it's a multi-day event. Whether it's Thursday through Sunday or Friday through Sunday is yet to be determined, but it will be a standalone racing festival. We are not contemplating any changes to the format of the summer meet. So we would come up to Saratoga for that 4 or 5 day period. Return to Aqueduct at the conclusion of the Belmont Stakes Racing Festival, and then reconvene in Saratoga as we have since 2018 for the traditional 40-day race meet over roughly 8 weeks. So no changes to the summer meet that has been so incredibly successful for so many years, and this is in addition to, and to be able to bring the Belmont up to Saratoga outside of that traditional summer season to generate economic impact throughout the region is especially important.
Now, what about the distance? Of course, it goes 1.5 miles. I read somewhere that there's talk about going to 1.25 miles for the race. Is that right?
That is right. Yeah. The most likely distance would be 1.25 miles. To start to run the Belmont Stakes at the traditional test of the champion length of 1.5 miles would require the race to begin literally in the middle of the far turn. And they did that at Aqueduct in the 60s. That is not something we would want to repeat. So 1.25 miles over, and tradition is obviously central to sports, but especially to horse racing. You consider that we've been doing it at Saratoga since 1863 in its current location since 1864. This will be the 156th running of the Belmont Stakes. So we appreciate that tradition, but this is a temporary adjustment to allow for the construction of a completely reimagined Belmont Park, which will hopefully by 2026 be the home of downstate racing and provide New Yorkers with a sports and entertainment destination without equal in the country. So
if someone wins the Triple Crown with a Saratoga Belmont that didn't go 1.5 miles, should it be counted differently as an achievement?
We don't think so. The Belmont's been around at different distances at different periods of time. I think back to 2020 when the Belmont was the first leg of the Triple Crown, when we were able to
because of
run
COVID,
the Belmont
right?
Exactly. And the Kentucky Derby was actually the final leg. So history will determine that, but to win a Triple Crown, whether the last race is 1.25 miles or 1.5 miles, is one of the rarest and most significant accomplishments of sports. It's why only so few horses have done it. So we'll let the critics determine that. What we're focused on is holding a really special event in upstate New York in both 2024 and 2025. That's the goal. Should things change, then we'll adjust as necessary. But we certainly hope that we're right back at Saratoga in early June 2024.
So it just occurs to me to ask, because I know this has been a source of attention over the years, which is Saratoga used to be 4 weeks, and then it got a little longer, and now it's got the 2 dark days, and it's up to 40. So if it goes really well in June, is NYRA envisioning lengthening the Saratoga meet?
No, not at this point. Saratoga, part of what makes Saratoga so successful and so dynamic is that it's a scarce kind of a resource. The fact that it's only 40 days, that it begins in the middle of July and ends on Labor Day, makes it all that more attractive to fans. It makes it all that more exciting. It's the summer place to be for a reason, and you're absolutely right. It used to be the August place to be, held across just 30 days. But that is not something that we're contemplating right now. And since we went to the 5-day, 8-week format in 2018, that's been even more well received than we could have anticipated.
Okay, that does it for this episode of the WAMC News Podcast. Thanks so much for listening. Until next time, I'm Ian Pickus.